Friends, we're all back together for the next episode of the Juicebox Podcast. Welcome.
My name is Mike, and I am a type 1 diabetic. When I was diagnosed, I was 54. I am now 56. Kind of unfortunately, I have a lot of experience with type 1 diabetes.
I am here to tell you about Juice Cruise 2026. We will be departing from Miami on June 21st, 2026 for a 7-night trip going to the Caribbean. That's right, we're going to leave Miami and then stop at Coco Cay in the Bahamas. After that, it's on to St. Kitts, St. Thomas, and a beautiful cruise through the Virgin Islands. The first Juice Cruise was awesome. The second one's going to be bigger, better, and bolder. This is your opportunity to relax while making lifelong friends who have type 1 diabetes. Expand your community and your knowledge on Juice Cruise 2026. Learn more right now at juiceboxpodcast.com/juicecruise. At that link, you'll also find photographs from the first cruise. Nothing you hear on the Juicebox Podcast should be considered advice, medical or otherwise. Always consult a physician before making any changes to your healthcare plan. This episode of the Juicebox Podcast is sponsored by Medtronic Diabetes and their MiniMed 780G system, designed to help ease the burden of diabetes management. Imagine fewer worries about missed boluses or miscalculated carbs, thanks to meal detection technology and automatic correction doses. Learn more and get started today at medtronicdiabetes.com/juicebox. This episode of the Juicebox Podcast is sponsored by the Contour NextGen blood glucose meter. Learn more and get started today at contournext.com/juicebox.
My name is Mike. I live in Utah, and I am a type 1 diabetic, newly diagnosed at the ripe age of, when I was diagnosed, I was 54. I am now 56. Kind of unfortunately, I have a lot of experience with type 1 diabetes.
Yeah, look at how you teased it out, Mike. That's a bit of a storyteller in you there. That's excellent.
Yeah, absolutely. Unfortunately, I don't know if you could say it's a horror story or a great story when it comes to diabetes. Unfortunately, baptism by fire, and I certainly thought I escaped it at my age, so I was a little shocked and devastated at the same time. Yeah, and here we are today.
That's how I envision this, actually. So let's do this. Are there any other autoimmune issues in your family?
There is not. I have a daughter who was diagnosed pretty much the same age as Arden. And at the time, I talked to my mom, and she said that they had an aunt that died prematurely, and they think it was type 1. But other than that, it was just type 2 diabetes. So when my daughter and then later my son, as we'll get into that, were diagnosed, they always wanted to know who to blame. And last spring, they decided to blame me.
So when I said, is there any other autoimmune in your family, you meant no, other than my 2 children who have type 1 diabetes?
Other than my 2 children who have type 1 diabetes. Gotcha. Absolutely. Yeah. So I guess in a way, I was the beginning.
Well, how many kids do you have in total?
Okay, so this will shock you a little bit, but I have 7. My wife has 2. I had 4, and then we adopted a girl out of the foster care when she was 13 years old. She's now 20.
That's interesting that you didn't get to that math the way I expected you to, because I know you live in Utah.
And I am not LDS, and I have a bunch of kids.
Yeah, when you said I have 7, I was like, why would you think this is shocking to me? But so you came about them, you've been collecting them in a couple of different ways.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, gotcha. Adding on, but I don't think we're going to add any more. I think we're good at 7.
Yeah. So you have, I almost said sired. What are we making puppies over here?
Yeah.
Why did that pop into my head? You're the father of 4 natural children.
I am the father of 4 natural children. Okay. Correct.
Your wife showed up with 2.
My wife showed up with 2. Yeah.
And you stole one from the mall.
We stole one from the foster care program. Okay. Yeah. Right. And it was actually. That's a whole podcast in itself. What a rewarding experience. And I could go on the road talking about how successful that is.
No kidding. Okay. So of your 4 kids that you had, I'm assuming in a previous marriage, what are their ages?
So my oldest son, who passed away in 2011, would have been 35 today.
Mm-hmm.
I have a daughter who will be 34 this winter, this December. She's my type 1 diabetic. My son, he lives in Portland. His name's Zach. He is 30, and he was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes 4 years ago. And then I have a younger daughter who's the only one that's not diabetic. She's 26.
Mike, I'm sorry to ask you, but how did your oldest son pass?
He went through a rough breakup and unfortunately took his own life.
Oh my gosh. At what age?
Yeah. He was 21, just barely turned 21.
Oh,
so it's been a while.
Yeah, no, but still. Did he have other... I don't know how to ask you this. Is that a thing you saw coming?
No. In fact, Scott, whenever somebody happens, maybe even when Arden's diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, you think, this doesn't happen to me, right? Like this happens to other people, not me. So it was a shock. It was a huge shock. Not something I was expecting by any means, but it definitely was shocking.
Well, I'm so sorry. So your daughter's diagnosed at 2, did you say?
She was 4 years old when she was diagnosed. So back in 1995.
95. Okay. So
yeah,
Arden was diagnosed when she was 2.
Yep.
And in 2006? Yes, 2006. I was like, there's a lot of math there. So, okay. So your daughter had diabetes for 10 years by the time my kid was diagnosed.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Definitely got a head start on you.
Okay. So 1996, she's 4 years old. Do you remember that process? Do you remember how it presented?
Just like probably any parent, yourself included, when you look back, you're like, how did we not catch it? But at the time, she never wet the bed.
Mm-hmm.
She was amazing. And then all of a sudden, she started wetting the bed. And we didn't think anything of it because I had never even really heard of type 1 diabetes at the time. The internet is not what it is today. And so she started wetting the bed, and then we would start leaving the house and we tell her to go to the bathroom. And I swear we get like 2 miles away and I have to go to the bathroom. And I remember saying, there's no way you have to go to the bathroom. You just went.
Right.
But we would stop. Didn't really notice her drinking anything. She was only 4, so didn't really notice if she was losing weight. And then she got sick and she just didn't get any better. And my ex-wife said, I'm going to take her to the doctor. And she did. And they did a urine test. And it came back like, you need to take her to the ER right now.
Okay.
And my wife called me and she said, you have to take her in. She has sugar in her urine. I'm like, well, what does that mean? And I don't know. And of course, as soon as they get her to the ER, they check her into ICU. And then we find out about type 1 diabetes.
Wow. You said she's sick and she didn't get better. Like, would you have described her as just like under the weather or flu-like symptoms, and how long did it last?
Yeah, just like the flu.
Mm-hmm.
That's really what we thought. She just had the flu. She just wasn't getting better. We hadn't put together any type of, urination issues with bedwetting or even leaving the house. We hadn't put that together. But she had the flu and running a fever, and she just wasn't getting any better. And that's when my ex-wife decided to take
just
her
like
in.
that. Do you know how long that process was? Was it days, weeks, where you thought she was sick?
I would say she was probably sick for about a week. And, 4-year-old being in daycare and around other kids, that wasn't abnormal. Kids are kind of petri dishes for disease, sickness anyway.
Right.
We really hadn't thought about it. It just lingered and it wasn't getting better. She wasn't in full DKA by any means. So we were very fortunate that it wasn't a quick trip to the ICU, even though it was but in a roundabout way.
So Mike, who takes care of the diabetes for the 4-year-old? Is it a shared experience between you and your ex, or is it one or the other? And what did that look like back then? What kind of insulin? What were you doing for management?
So we were doing MDI. At that time, there was no really pumps. They were around, but they weren't really readily. It wasn't something certainly we were going to put on a 4-year-old. Back then, I think they were about the size of a car battery. They were big. There was certainly no CGM. So, we went through some education classes at the hospital. And of course, we went through a counseling class that it wasn't any of our fault. And we were sent home with, vials and syringes. Mm-hmm. And that's what we gave her. At that time, I don't even believe pens were available.
Okay.
And as I look through that, my wife worked in in the evenings and at night, and I worked during the day. So it was a shared 50-50, and we were trying to figure it out. When I look at today's technology, with CGMs and pumps, and then I think back in 1995, I was sent home with a 4-year-old and syringes and vials. How did I keep her alive?
Yeah.
Like, there was so much of a picture we didn't understand. And back then, you hear this term, and I've even heard it on your podcast. They defined her as a brittle diabetic, meaning hard to control. It was just, we didn't know the whole picture of what was going on. That's why she was hard to control.
Yeah, no kidding. You said you don't know how you kept her alive, but how do you think you did it? What was it? Did you eventually find a rhythm, something that was agreeable? Or what I mean?
I think more it's, now that I'm on insulin, it's more I look back at how, at the time I didn't realize how dangerous insulin was.
Okay.
And you were always walking in a way with especially a type 1 diabetic at that age, you're kind of walking a tight line. But I think because of my young age, the internet wasn't what it is. So we really couldn't research it. We were just counting carbs, giving her the right amount of insulin, doing Lantus at night. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, trying to finger prick her, as much as you can to get a good picture before meals, after meals, and kind of understand it. But you certainly didn't get that every 5-minute blood sugar to really obtain a full picture.
Mike, are you old enough to appreciate that 30 years ago, you couldn't really research something like that? How different the world is. Like, I imagine people younger than us are never really going to understand that you just, like, somebody said something to you and you went, okay, well, the doctor said it. That's it. We'll do this for the rest of our lives now. There's nowhere to check. Maybe you'd bump into somebody eventually who'd say something to you, counterintuitive to what you'd heard the first time, but there was nowhere to go to find out. It's crazy how much the access to information has changed in such a short, I think of it as a short amount of time, but I'm assuming people think of 30 years as a long time, but it seems fast to me.
It's funny you say that because, we were so isolated. I have a lot of medical professionals in my family, and I look back at like just 100 years ago, like when you look at the whole lifespan of humans existent, the leaps and bounds that we have made in the last 100 years. And then really, like you said, with technology, information 30 years ago, that just wasn't available. It's such a short amount of time that now we have that. But I also question, like, would it have been scary to have all that information back then? It certainly would have helped.
It's possible that the knowledge without the technology might have been frightening, because you did say, like, you didn't know even that the insulin could be dangerous. So you were just doing what they said. You weren't even thinking twice about like what might be happening afterwards, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And sadly, now, like, if you go low in the middle of the night, you get alarms, which are really annoying because I get a ton of them. But back then, the only way we knew that she was going low is we would hear her cry. And at that point, I think we were sleeping very lightly just so we could always hear her. And it's just scary to think what was going on. And then I think even like what was going on 30 years before she was even diagnosed, how much scarier was that? Because at least we had test strips and we had more than one a day.
Do you recall what her A1Cs were like back then?
She was always actually, for the most part, pretty good. She was in 6s, never really got down in the 5s, maybe low 7s.
They must have been thrilled with that back then.
Yeah, they were really happy. Yeah. We were really good at always taking her to the endocrinologist every time she had an appointment. We never really skipped any corners on it. We wanted to make sure she got the best care.
Have you ever talked to her about what it was like to grow up with diabetes? Does she have remembrances or struggles or celebrations that she shared with you? ContourNext.com/juicebox. That's the link you'll use to find out more about the Contour NextGen blood glucose meter. When you get there, there's a little bit at the top. You can click right on blood glucose monitoring. I'll do it with you. Go to meters, click on any of the meters. I'll click on the NextGen, and you're going to get more information. It's easy to use and highly accurate. SmartLight provides a simple understanding of your blood glucose levels. And of course, with second chance sampling technology, you can save money with fewer wasted test strips. As if all of that wasn't enough, the Contour NextGen also has a compatible app for an easy way to share and see your blood glucose results. ContourNext.com/juicebox. And if you scroll down at that link, you're going to see things like a buy now button. You could register your meter after you purchase it. Or what is this? Download a coupon Oh, receive a free Contour NextGen blood glucose meter? Do tell. ContourNext.com/juicebox. Head over there now. Get the same accurate and reliable meter that we use. Today's episode is sponsored by Medtronic Diabetes, who is making life with diabetes easier with the MiniMed 780G system. The MiniMed 780G automated insulin delivery system anticipates, adjusts, and corrects every 5 minutes. Real-world results show people achieving up to 80% time in range with recommended settings without increasing lows. But of course, individual results may vary. The 780G works around the clock so you can focus on what matters. Have you heard about Medtronic's extended infusion set? It's the first and only infusion set labeled for up to a 7-day wear. This feature is repeatedly asked for, and Medtronic has delivered. 97% of people using the 780G reported that they could manage their diabetes without major disruptions of sleep. They felt more free to eat what they wanted, and they felt less stress with fewer alarms and alerts. You can't beat that. Learn more about how you can spend less time and effort managing your diabetes by visiting medtronicdiabetes.com/juicebox.
No, she doesn't, she doesn't really know life without type 1 diabetes. So for her, it's very interesting. She just doesn't remember anything. She was really great through the whole thing, especially as I look back now that I'm a type 1. But the only time she ever cried was the day we brought her home from the hospital and pricked her finger and gave her the first shot because, of course, she thought, I'm out of the hospital. I don't have to do this. And now she does. She never really cried. Now I look back and, now that I'm type 1, I look back and I think, I wish I had understood a little bit more. But of course, I was trying to keep her, her A1C low, make sure her blood sugar wasn't spiking. So it was harder for me to understand, especially as she got into the teenage years, of having a cheat day or a day I just don't want to be diabetic. Mm-hmm. I didn't understand those then.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think this is where, honestly, where your story is going to get the most interesting is when you're diagnosed and you have the ability to look back over all this time with her and then, of course, with your son as well.
Yeah.
How long does she have type 1 before your son's diagnosed? And was he diagnosed as an adult out of the house or with you still?
Yeah. So my son was in the Navy. He was stationed in San Diego. Went in when he was, just 20, 21 years old. Mm-hmm. And he got out. He was out in August of 2021. He moved to Portland, bought a house. He was driving down to San Diego to see his wife's family. And all of a sudden he looked at his wife and said, I just don't feel good. He knew something was wrong. So this was December, Christmas of 2021. And he stopped at Walmart and bought a cheat checker and checked. And it said hi to him. Wanted to know how he was doing that day too. And he immediately looked at his wife and said, we have to go to the ICU. We have to get to the ER really quick. He went to the ER. And I remember when he called me and he said, Dad, I'm in the hospital. I said, well, for what? And he said, I'm type 1 diabetic. I just was complete shock.
Yeah. Why, Mike? Because it just felt like it had happened once. It couldn't happen again?
Basically, yeah. It happened once. It shouldn't happen again. He was, 26, 27 years old. It just didn't seem right. And then I remember I teared up. And then when we got off the phone with him, I said, thinking like, to God or whatever, I'll take this. And unfortunately I did, but somebody else didn't live up to their end.
Didn't do the exchange. They just spread it out.
Yeah, exactly.
I thought he was crying because he went from living in the weather of San Diego to the weather of Portland, Oregon.
Oh, yeah.
That'd make me upset. Wow.
Yeah.
So he's diagnosed as a young married person. Had he been married long at that point?
He had only been married about a year. So it was very new. Obviously, he knew all about diabetes. And I would say in the hospital, he was joking with me. We were FaceTiming and he was uplifted. He was like, I'm going to be fine. It was more me that was almost devastated over it than him.
You think that he felt like he was going to be fine because he grew up with a sister who had it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he had the confidence. And he's just a great kid anyways. Everything's positive. He's just fun to be around. Mm-hmm. He was kind of in a way a lucky one. His A1C when he went in was 17. He had been high, but because he had just got out of the military, he was able to go back. That was something they should have caught when he got out of the military. So the military will actually pay for his medical supplies, full pump and everything for the rest of his life.
Oh, because he was in when this started and it wasn't caught, this falls under his veterans benefits.
Absolutely.
Oh.
Yep. So he'll have 100%. And when my daughter had it, one of the first things I was worried about was like, this is not fair in life because this is a lifetime expense that's not fair to her.
Yeah. The cost is, I was just having a conversation with somebody about some generic insulin that's coming, and they're talking a lot about like, what kind of pen is it going to go into? And, like they're, at a company level, they're talking about all that. And somebody remarked, I think really you should be a little more focused on just the fact that people need affordable insulin. Put it in vials and give it to them.
Yeah.
Let's stop worrying about like this part of it here. Like, let's just, there's a lot of people who can't afford their insulin. They're rationing. They're not eating sometimes because of it. Like, they don't care which one of the pens you choose. Like, just like, let's get it to them. And I thought it's interesting the way you just talked about the financial side of it, right? Like, my gosh, like what a relief is it that someone else is going to pay for this stuff for your son versus your daughter who's, stuck paying for her whole life for it. Hey, Is he still married?
Yes, he's still married, lives in Portland, and he's on a pump, and his A1C he was down to 5.5, and they're trying to kick him up a little bit. They want him more around that 5.7, 5.9 range.
Okay. Is he experiencing a lot of lows?
More than what they would like. He's on a T-Slim. Yeah, he tends to hover a little bit low, but then he'll also spike. His standard deviation's a little bit on the higher side.
Okay. And can I ask, I've been wondering this for 10 minutes now. Do you think that one of your kids getting type 1 diabetes at all added to the fact that you're divorced from their mom now? Did it add a level of difficulty to your marriage, or do you think they're not related?
No, I don't think it is. They've been diagnosed for about 6 years, and it really didn't cause a lot of friction, that part. There were some other things that just caused that.
I don't need to know what they are. I just was wondering if that was a contributing factor or not. Okay.
No, I don't think it was.
Yeah. So now, how long ago was your son diagnosed?
So he was diagnosed December of 2021, and it was like day before Christmas.
Right. So maybe 4 years ago, in that range. This is some like couple of decades since your daughter's been type 1. So your daughter's diagnosed at a really young age. You grow up as a father through all that. He's diagnosed more recently. And then it's just a couple years later that you are as well?
Yeah. My story was actually really interesting. The way it came about, I was one of the very fortunate ones that I didn't go into DKA or ICU or anything. But yes, it was just really about 3 years later that we had noticed something with me. And in 2023, I had worked for a company for about 7 years, and I had another company that recruited me, and I decided to make the jump. And in between, I had a couple-week period where I just decided to take a couple weeks off. And I thought, well, I'm going to go in and get my physical done because I have asthma. And so I need to get my asthma medication renewed. And I went to the doctor. They did a full blood palette. So this was September of 23. And it came back a few days later. And my primary care physician, she's a marathon runner. And maybe we should say that I'm a cyclist. I used to race bikes. And at this time, I stopped racing in 2015, but I still work out anywhere from 10 to 15 hours a week. I'm on a bike. So I'm a very active person. And so, of course, with a lot of athletes, what happens is you tend to eat whatever you want because you work out. And so my A1C, she called me and it came back at 5.9. She said, Mike, your A1C is a little high. And she said, obviously you're not a type 2, but she didn't even mention diabetes. We really just talked about, I should stop eating sugar. And because I worked out, your normal person would go, let's say in the evening, eat 1 or 2 Oreo cookies. And I'm probably the guy that eats 10 to 12 cookies and then maybe washes it down with a brownie. I said, that's fine. So in September, when she said, I bet if you just stop eating it, maybe just had a treat here or there on the weekends, you'll be fine. So I being who I am, I completely stopped eating sugar. Went to Mexico, Cancun for a week. There I had some desserts and a few drinks. I'm not a heavy drinker, but I really cut back drinking. And I went back and she was fantastic. She could have left it at that and said, don't worry about coming back, just stop eating sugar. But she said, come back in 3 months and let's test it again. I went back 3 months later. It was December. It was right around probably December 20th. So shortly before Christmas, and got my blood work done. And I remember I was actually in a department store checking out, buying my wife a Christmas present. And I got an email that my blood results came back. And I started opening it, checked out. And as I was walking through the parking lot to my truck, I looked at it and I saw my A1C had gone from 5.9 to 6.
Mm-hmm.
And the tears started coming. I knew. I was like, wait a minute, there's no way it can be 6. How can this happen?
Yeah.
Talked to the doctor and, it was like, okay, let's just keep watching it. We're going to test again in 3 more months. So in that time, I was working out. There was Christmas Eve. And I thought, I'm going to go to Walmart and just buy a glucose checker.
Yeah.
Because you can get them fairly inexpensive there. And I checked. I just finished working out, got home, opened it up, checked it. My sugar levels were 180. I was like, this is not right. I shouldn't be 180. So I started checking it periodically. Went through the holidays, didn't really have much sugar or anything. And then in March of 2022, March of 2024, we started looking for a second home. And we were looking in Southern Utah. At the same time, there's a lot of stress going on of buying an additional home. My son was a type 1 diabetic, and I talked to him, almost every other day. And he said, Dad, I'm going to send you a CGM. He's like, I have so many. I'll send you one so we can get a clearer picture. And he sent it. I was completely shocked. All of a sudden, I was seeing 300s.
Yeah.
And I was like, this isn't good. I went down to do a home inspection on our house, and I came back, and my sugar levels were so elevated. It was causing me a little stress. I actually thought I was having a heart attack and went to the doctor the next day. Did another one A1C check, and I jumped from 6 to 6.8.
Mike, that sadness you felt, was it about your own health solely? Was it about what you thought you were losing, what you're about to experience? Or do you think you started to think more about your kids? Or do you think there's a combination of things in there?
I think when I looked at it, it was one of those. So I had worked out, raced bikes my entire life and, racing, 10 to 13,000 miles a year. And I remember when I looked at my primary care physician, I don't think she even wanted to tell me what my A1C was. Because when she did tell me, I had to ask her, and she got real quiet. And she said 6.8. And the tears came. And I was like, I did everything in my life not to be here.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, she said, it's not your fault. And she was real nice. She said, if anything, because of your lifestyle, you probably would have been here 2 years ago in a lot worse shape. So you didn't do anything. And so I think it was just a shock, because I had always really taken great pride in really taking care of myself, being active, being healthy. I was the guy that would go to the doctor and my blood pressure would be so low. I would be really proud of that. So that was a huge swing for me to go from that to all of a sudden having a life-changing disease.
Mm-hmm. It was more about I guess that psychological aspect of how is it possible I put this much effort into something and it still didn't work out?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And, I've heard, even on your podcast, other older people saying the same thing I thought. Yeah. I thought at 54, 55 years old, I'd escaped that. I certainly knew what it was, but I thought I had escaped it.
Was there a piece of like you said earlier, your daughter had type 1 for such a long time, your son's diagnosed later, you think, oh God, that can't happen. Like, it's already happened to us. Is this like how is it possibly going to happen a third time? It's happened twice? Or is it more about feeling like marked? Do you start feeling, this thing feels like it's out to get, I should mention this, right? It's the 50th anniversary of Jaws. Remember in Jaws where they acted like the shark had something out for the family? Like, did you feel like that?
That didn't really cross my mind too much. Mm-hmm. What did cross my mind was my youngest daughter didn't have diabetes
Is it going to happen to
Pretty
her?
much every one of your direct siblings has it. Now your dad, like, are you next?
Yeah. Now you're worried for her. It's going to come for her as well.
Absolutely.
How old is she?
He is 27.
And I guess it doesn't really matter because now at this point you have someone diagnosed at 4, someone diagnosed at 21, someone diagnosed at 52. Like there's no even rhyme or reason to the age there in the family. So this is just a thing I imagine you're going to worry about for the rest of your life for her.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And so of course my diabetes stories doesn't end there. So I was diagnosed, and then in June, I think it was June of last year, my wife's half brother wound up in the ICU, DKA. And then it's like, wow, now we have another one, no blood relation, but okay, now is my wife on that? And we did go get her tested for the antibodies.
Mike, I'm sorry, your current wife or your ex-wife?
My current wife.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, geez.
Yeah. And we've been together for 20 years. So it's been a long time.
I was just going to say, like, if we found it in your ex-wife's family line, then it makes sense that, that so many of your kids have it too. Is there anxiety in your family? Like with your kids or yourself? Is anybody anxious? ADHD, anything like that?
No, not at all. If anything, we're the 100% opposite.
Yeah,
we're the family that when something bad happens, we'll lick our wounds for a week or two, and then we'll start picking out the positive, like even me with type 1 diabetes. Mm-hmm. Even though my daughter had it, like now I really understand how the whole digestive system works, the liver and everything. And it's like, okay, now I probably understand more about the digestive system, diabetes, more than endocrinologists. So we're kind of always that family that picks the positive out of everything. Mm-hmm. Even when my son passed away, we picked out positive things. And that's just the way we are. Lick our wounds for a little bit, and then we pick ourselves back up.
Can you tell me some of the positives you identified after his passing?
Yeah, absolutely. It was devastating because I had never even been to a funeral one. So to go to my, the first one to be my son, but it really brought my children together closer, even closer than they were. And that was always the positive. And it actually taught me to let things go. There was a lot of things, even like I would argue with my ex-wife. And I was like, so much of that just didn't matter after that. It was so insignificant. It just didn't matter.
Yeah, you gained a perspective of a 100-year-old man in 5 seconds, really.
Yeah, absolutely.
I feel like diabetes has done that for me.
Oh,
and I feel like I see it with other people as well. Just at some point, I don't know, the minutia and the silly things that we all like get upset about or argue about. When they happen now, you just feel like, God, this is just so meaningless. Like,
to get worked up over senseless things. That's actually what came up. It was like, this just isn't worth energy, really negative energy anymore. And I really took that approach with my ex-wife. I was like, I'm just not going to argue with you. I just don't care anymore.
Yeah. I don't know, like the words for it, but it doesn't happen consciously in your head, but like, what are we going to argue about where we're going to dinner? Like Arden's pancreas doesn't make insulin. Or my son's not here anymore. Like this is a real thing that happens. So just because it happened to us this one time doesn't mean it's not happening to other people all over the world constantly, that people aren't battling depression or, quiet battles that nobody else knows about, and that there aren't shocked families left behind or health issues that people are just constantly fighting with. And we're going to sit here and like be mad that, I don't know, the gutter guys didn't come on the right day, or just doesn't matter. I don't know. I just think it gives you like a lifetime's worth of perspective in a short amount of time. And I think a lot of people are lucky enough to level up from that and maybe find some clarity that they didn't have prior.
Yeah, I'll agree 100%.
Yeah.
I really do think, the T1 just changes everything for you. And, now that I've been diagnosed with it, it really changes everything. More than raising children with T1 was one thing, or a child, and then having an adult or, an adult child. But now having it myself, it's just everything is so different in life now.
Well, that's what I want to check with you, because listen, it's easy for me to philosophize about it, right? Like, because I don't have to take the insulin Arden does, right? Like I don't get low, she does.
Right.
I don't have to worry about the future, she does. Like those are all her actual lived problems, not mine. But I know how I feel, and I know how I've been impacted by it. But I guess my question to you did any of that change or deepen when it became your diagnosis, or are the feelings I'm feeling for a child really the same that I would get if I had diabetes myself?
Yeah, it's interesting. Obviously experiencing some lows and some highs. I have a completely different perspective of it now. When you watch, your girl go through it, it's one thing. Now I'm experiencing it. And I don't know if it's worse because of my age. I don't know if that's something that could even be quantified. But I certainly have a whole new understanding. I remember when my daughter would come home and she, her blood sugar would be high, and I'd ask her what she had for lunch and, how much insulin did you take? And I remember saying, like, did you forget your diabetes? And now I have a whole new perspective of that, a clearer picture, and certainly understanding of it.
Have you contacted her and shared that with her?
We have kind of a strained relationship a little bit, which is sad, but no, I haven't. Certainly with my son, we talk all the time and we can definitely correlate. He's actually maintained really well. I'm a little bit better than him, I think.
Yeah.
But he's really good at it. But, I had a really scary low last December. And so it's nice to talk to somebody who's gone through that to get some understanding.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know the source of your strain with your daughter, but I mean, I would imagine it would mean something to her to know that, like you have a different perspective now that you have it. And, you're, I don't know, sorry for any time that you may have, like, I don't know if that fixes things with people or not, but I'm assuming we've all done that to a kid with type 1. Everybody who's a caregiver at some point or another, you say that thing, right? Like that no matter how you mean it, sounds like, what did you do? Like how did you make this happen? Like, what did you not do that caused this? That as much as that's not your intention in the moment, I imagine it's overwhelmingly received that way from the type 1s themselves. So I don't know, maybe she don't want to hear from you. I'm not asking you, but I feel like that'd be a thing somebody would want to know.
I definitely think we will have that conversation. As you know, with Arden, when they're young like that, even teenage, you're just trying to do everything to make sure that there's no effects 30 years down the road. So you want to keep them as in line as you can, so there's not other health problems. And obviously, that's something you care for very much. And you want to make sure that they're really, keeping in line and just being healthy.
Yep.
So I didn't really understand that, but there's days now I look at my numbers and I'm really well controlled. I'm 98 to 99% in range every day. My standard deviation's about 19%. So I'm very well controlled. But even then, sometimes it's just like, you just don't want to care about it one day. You just, I read something that said the average diabetic makes an extra 150 to 200 decisions a day. And there's a lot of truth to that even though I raised a type 1 diabetic, I didn't understand it.
Yeah, no, you can't possibly, and now, right? That's not just a thing you've heard. Like I hear people make a lot of extra decisions and they have type 1. Now you're making those decisions. And yeah, again, your perspective is raised. You might be an oracle by the time you're done, Mike, if stuff keeps happening to you.
My gosh. So I started having really high blood sugars. I was leaving town. My doctor was out of town, and somebody in her office had prescribed me metformin because he didn't know me. So he's like, okay, he's got high blood sugar. It's type 2. So I took that for a little while. It did nothing. And then I took a C-peptide test, and it came back that I had the antibodies. And I called my doctor, and he said, okay. And I was leaving town again because unfortunately I travel sometimes. And she called me in Lantis, and she said, I don't know if this is good or bad, but she's like, you're one of my only patients I could just call in insulin and not have to give them education. Like, yeah, sadly, I have too much education in type 1 diabetes.
Yeah. Did you find that the experience with your daughter growing up and now your conversations with your son, that there was nothing really left for you to understand? Like you were just like, oh, I have it now, I know how to do it. Is there any gaps in your knowledge at all?
Well, so when I was raising my daughter, there was no CGMs weren't around. So I definitely saw a very clear picture of what happens when you eat food to get that and see it. Yeah. The other thing is I feel like no type 1 diabetics are alike. Everybody's different. We all have different eating habits. We drink differently.
Sure.
Just everything's different, our lifestyles. So even though I knew that, if you draw it on paper or whiteboard of what type 1 diabetes, it's perfect, right? Okay, you bring in this many carbs, you take this much insulin, no problem. But when you're actually living it in real life, it's not that clear. It's just in every day is different.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty lucky. I eat kind of the same thing every day. I have a yogurt in the morning. If I'm going out training, I eat the same food. So it was more learning about myself and really understanding how the CGMs work. There was that little gap, even though my son was on a CGM, my daughter's on a CGM. I didn't raise anybody on a CGM.
Right.
So that part, there was a little bit of a learning curve when to do a calibration, which is very rare. I do one. I'm pretty lucky. I'm one of the very few on G7 that has failed. I think over the last year and a half, I've had 2 that have failed.
Yeah, I don't think that makes you like one of the few. I think that maybe just people on the internet are, more drawn to use the internet sometimes for talking about what's not working, trying to get help, and people who are putting on, I say all the time, like Arden has incredible success with the G7. But I don't go online and be like, oh, there's another sensor that lasted 10 hours plus the 12-hour grace period, or 10 days plus 12 hours. That's not a thing you get to tell people online,
Yeah.
Can I ask you about biking? How long have you been riding?
So I started riding in 1995.
Mm-hmm.
It was funny. I just barely moved to Utah, and I had a neighbor who was going to go do this 100-mile big bike event, and I didn't even have a bike. And I was like, okay, yeah, I'll do it. So I went to Walmart. I bought a cheap mountain bike, probably weighed 3,000 pounds. I did it. I swore I'd never ride a bike again. And then later that year, I ended up buying my first road bike, rode it very, very often. But I really didn't start racing bikes until 2005. In 2005, I really got into racing. Endurance bike racing was my big thing. That was the first year I did. There's a race that they do here. It's fairly known throughout the nation. It's called Logan to Jackson, and it's 206 miles. You go over 3 mountain ranges, and you do that all in one day.
Jeez.
Yeah. So I did that, and 2005 was my first year. I didn't even know I was going to do it until a week before I signed up for it. And then I decided that bike racing was for me. I've done it 10 times now. I actually stopped racing in 2015. But, in the highlight of my career, I raced 62 times in 1 year. So, yeah, wow. I raced quite a bit.
And was that just a thing you picked up at some point, or were you incredibly active before that?
No, I wasn't at all, really. I got out of the Navy, moved to Utah. I'd done a little bit of running. I blew out my knee, came down into a rut the wrong way, blew it out. And so when I got into racing, riding bikes, I always enjoyed it as a kid. And it was just something I picked up. I was really good at it. Mm-hmm. If you look at me now, you would think, wow, that's a really tall, skinny guy. By nature, I'm not a skinny person. I'm 6'1". I think at one point I was up to 225 pounds. Right now I weigh about 160.
The riding
it's just because.
I'm sorry, did the riding take the weight off of you?
Yeah, the riding weight took it off. I had done that event in 95, then I gained some weight. And then I got back into it on a mountain bike with road tires on it. So they were not knobby tires. And I went and did the event, and I was keeping up with all the road guys. And I was like, all right, it's time to get back into this.
Do a real bike.
Time to get out riding. And so I do think the bike racing helped with the type 1 diabetes. Because as I look back now, I think I struggled with this. My honeymoon phase was relatively short. And I think that's because I rode through my honeymoon phase and kept my sugar levels down.
The amount of time that you knew you had type 1 was short, but you think that maybe there was a longer honeymoon prior to you knowing that was kind of helped by your activity.
Yeah, absolutely. So I really suffered on the bike last year. I was getting diagnosed. I was getting on insulin. They had me on metformin. I was carrying a lot of fatigue. I go on a 30-minute bike ride, come home, take a 3-hour nap. And I was just wrecked, and I couldn't figure it out. And then once I've been on a pump now for about 50 days.
Okay.
And so when you eat, as you know, your carbs break down into sugar, which translates to energy. Well, if you don't have any insulin, where's your body getting the energy from? It's breaking down your muscle. And now that I'm on insulin and I'm regulated very well, I'm starting to build up muscle again. And I look back and think, wow, I was really suffering for 3-4 years, because now I can go out, ride my bike, and I can hit 400 or 500 watts and maintain that for a little while and actually get home. And I'm not sore. I'm not fatigued where I was for many years. And so now I'm starting to look back and think, was this, I caught COVID in 2000? Did that trigger it? And I've really been suffering with this longer than what I know.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to figure that one out.
I actually found myself wondering if your son's service maybe didn't keep him very active, and maybe like when he was out, maybe that's why. I actually wondered, like, it was, not enough there for me to say out loud at the moment, but you said his A1C was 17.
17.
Yeah. Right.
So
I don't know, like, the activity definitely can help during those long, slow honeymoon periods, especially with like Lotta.
Yeah, absolutely. So one thing we found out with my son was, he just found this out a couple months ago. My son has neuropathy pretty bad. He's walking with a cane.
Really?
And yeah, he's only 30 years old. So of course, his doctor wanted to know why. Like, why is he suffering so bad with all of this? Why is he walking with a cane? Why is he having foot problems? They pulled his medical records and they found out that 5 years prior to his diagnosis, they did a blood workup on him and his A1C was 6.8. And all they put in the note was, we'll watch it.
Yeah.
So he had been suffering with this for a very long time. The military didn't really thoroughly do what they should have done.
Do you think your son had elevated blood sugars for 5 years before he was diagnosed? Yeah. Oh, gosh.
Yep, 5 years, because it did come back. He was a 6'8". And as we all know, 6'8", that's a big trigger. But I think especially we see this a lot. And, I read this on forums. I've heard it on your podcast of everybody. They automatically think it's type 2 at first in older people, and so that's tend to, just eat better and it'll go away. And that's not the case.
Probably what they were thinking there too. So
yeah, absolutely.
You're doing a great job of telling your story, but is there something that drew you to want to be on the podcast that I'm not covering or getting to?
I started listening to your podcast because when my brother-in-law was diagnosed with type 1, he also had a brain injury. And so I was going to the doctor with him to really help him out. I was already diagnosed at T1. I was just doing MDI at the time. So I was going to his pump education classes with him, helped him pick out a pump. And then when they educated on, the educator told me about your podcast. And so I started listening to it then from basically episode 1. I think I got up to about 400s. Now I'm kind of going backwards. So it was more just helping him. He got the Omnipod. I thought I had a really interesting story, my 30 years worth of diabetes, becoming a diabetic.
Yeah.
And if anything, it was more wanted to, it was almost like through experience of now looking back at what my daughter went through 30 years ago of do everything you can, be supportive, help out. There's going to be those days. And I can only imagine being a teenager who's lived with diabetes for, let's say, 10, 12 years of how frustrating that has to be on a daily basis. And it's okay to get in the weeds with them and let them be mad about the disease. And, it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
It's not something that can just easily be managed. It's probably one of the most self-managed, frustrating diseases, known to man.
Do you think that you, in the pursuit of being supportive or keeping things on the right track, do you think there were times that your daughter wanted to commiserate or be sad and you didn't let her?
Probably a little. Well, no,
No?
Definitely. We knew it was very, very frustrating. But I think we definitely wanted to understand, but maybe not as much understanding of what it was because we weren't living with it. So you can understand as much as you think but until you're actually really living it, then you really get the full picture of it.
Yeah. Yeah. I in the past have worried that this is a great format for conversation, but at the same time, like, you have to be, I don't know what the word is. You have to be like clear and you can't get muddled when you're talking all the time. So like I've worried in the past that like just through trying to tell a story and not being able to tell every second of it, sharing my perspective could even feel blasé at times. Like, I don't feel that way at all. It's just that, sometimes you say something, whether it's to another person directly or here on a podcast or anywhere, and you can't give the entire context of what you're thinking. So you give the tiniest point about what's being said right now. And then I can look back later and see how the person who heard that might have really benefited from more context or been put off because it sounds like you're simplifying something when you don't really feel that way. You're just trying to be concise. I don't know if does that all make sense or not, but I'm aware of that. But at the same time, like, the podcast also has to be, it has to flow and it has to be entertaining, and every thought can't get broken down for 10 minutes. And anyway, it's interesting to me that you have so much time with a child with type 1, then you get to re-experience it the way you did with your son, and then now you have this personal experience. Like you said, it's just an interesting story. It's a bit of a different pathway. Can I ask you, do you have worries about your own health moving forward? Like, what are your expectations for the rest of your life?
I had a really scary low last year, 34.
Mm-hmm.
And it was more, the Lantus went direct into a cell and hit right away. So there was 12 units that just injected me, and within 20 minutes.
You hit like a blood vessel with your slow acting insulin?
Yeah, I hit a blood vessel because I work from home. I have for, I don't know, about 10 years now. So I work from home. I was staring at my computer, and, the vision got really weird. I hadn't done anything different than what I do any other day. I had my yogurt, my coffee. I was staring at the computer pretty, intently. Vision started going weird. I looked out the window, looked back, and it still didn't clear up. And then, of course, the alarms went off. I immediately finger pricked, and I was 34, and I yelled for my daughter to go get my wife, and she came in, and I thought I was in survival mode at that. What's that?
You thought you were going down?
Oh, I was going down. I was sitting on the floor trying to open gummy bears. I didn't realize how hard gummy bears can be to open when your sugar levels at a 34, but it dropped me from 120 to 34 in 20 minutes.
Wow.
So I was coming down really fast. I didn't think a human person could sweat that much without working out. I remember when I finally came out of it, I was just completely soaked. So in that one, that was pretty hard understanding that. Had a great positive experience with a dog on that experience. And so, I have incremental steps, pretty well controlled. We've talked about, how, you typically 98 to 99% in range. Part of me at 56, I'm like, well, at least now I know what's probably, I'm going to die one day from some side effect of diabetes. I might be 95 or so, but, it's there. Now that I'm on a pump, I was doing MDI. So at the beginning of this year, when my A1C was at 5.5, they decided, like, okay, we have to get you. I was taking more Lantus than fast acting, and they wanted to switch it. They were like, you're having too many lows. It's interesting when I'm on a bike and I'm going, my heart rate's, let's say 160, my blood sugars will spike. I won't drop. I'll actually go up really high. I remember one time I was mountain biking up in the mountains, and for 30 minutes, I heard my Dexcom alarm go off because I was 250, 275 the whole time. When I go hiking or I walk my dogs, that's when I go low. And I can drop from, let's say, 120 to 80 within 20 minutes. So one of the things they wanted to do was back off the Lantus and start doing more fast-acting insulin. And that actually raised my A1C. I was in Destin, Florida for a wedding in May. And at the wedding at night, when I think I put my 12th shot in my leg, I said, that's it. It's time to go to a pump.
Mm-hmm.
Ordered my pump when I got back into Utah and started July 1st, actually, of this year.
What'd you get?
So I got the Mobi.
Mm-hmm. How you like it?
Yeah, I really like it. I love the software. I like seeing how it works.
Awesome.
When it gives automatic boluses, seeing how the basal rate turns off at night. Tubing never bothered me. I actually didn't want to go with the Omnipod because quite frankly, I just didn't want another big thing hanging off me because, cycling, you're wearing, tight spandex clothes, outfit and everything. So I just didn't want another device hanging off me.
You wear the Mobi clipped onto your clothing?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Just clip it on. I have the 23-inch tube. I tried the 5-inch tube. That about drove me nuts. I only did that once. So the Mobi doesn't bother me at all. I sleep with it on.
That's
I
awesome.
think the Mobi is actually really good. My daughter and my son are both on a T-Slim, and my brother-in-law, who was diagnosed last year, is on the Omnipod.
No. Well, let me just say tandemdiabetes.com/juicebox, omnipod.com/juicebox, twist.com/juicebox, and medtronicdiabetes.com/juicebox. You want a pump, please use one of my links. That's all I got there. Mike, thank you for letting me inject that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome.
Yeah, I think the Mobi is fantastic, especially with the CGM. And if this pump died tomorrow, I'd go get another Mobi.
Yeah, you're enjoying
It just wouldn't even be a question.
It's great to hear people find stuff that jives with how they live and works the way they want it to. It's just the greatest thing. So I'm thrilled.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was apprehensive, though. I can admit, I really wanted to go with the T-Slim. And I think that part of that was my age of having a pump that didn't have a screen or anything, and I had to rely on a cell phone. That part kind of bothered me at first. And then when I just kind of saw, and maybe a little coaxing from my wife of giving the Mobi a try, I'm really glad I went with the Mobi.
Awesome. That's great. I'm very happy for you. Let's see. What else? We good? I mean, have we done it, as they say? Or is there something we've left out? I can't imagine we've left something out. Is there anybody left you're related to that could get diabetes?
Well, unfortunately, there is. My daughter, I want her to go get tested. I want her to get the antibody test. So if she has it, we can get her, the proper medication to try and push that off.
That's what was in my head. Did she respond well to that when you suggested it, or how does she feel about it?
She responded really well. I told her, because she told me that her primary physician said that, she doesn't have a danger of being it and didn't want to do it. And I said, let me know. My endocrinologist will set you up with a chart and they'll order the labs for you. She did it for my wife, and she'll do it for her too. I said, let me know. I'll even drive you over there. We'll go get it done. If we can, push this off as long as possible, let's do it. She's very open to it. She lives about 70 miles away from me. And so she does want to do it. So we're going to take her into my endocrinologist and get that done.
Strange for the doctor to say that. I mean, 2 of her 3 siblings have type 1. And sadly, you don't know if the third one might have gotten it at some point. You didn't have the opportunity to know that. Like, weird to think that it's not worth looking into. You know what I mean? Like, it seems obvious to me that it's a possibility.
Yeah, especially when you have, your father who was diagnosed in his 50s.
On top of everything else. Yeah.
Yeah, legitimate. So I really do want to get her tested. I don't know how much time we have, but I do have a great story of a dog story.
I'll finish with a dog story. Mike, go ahead.
All right. So we have a house in southern Utah, and I would go hiking with my dogs a lot. They're both standard poodles. They'll be 3 years old this September, and they're brother and sister. And the sister is, her name's Delilah. And I took her hiking on a Saturday, and my wife and we did 4.5 miles. And the next day I got home from a 2.5, 3 hour bike ride. My wife was not home. So I ate. My blood sugars were about 190. And I said, all right, let's go for a hike. And we hiked up to a top of a mesa, which is about 1,000 vertical feet. About 3/4 of the way up, she started looking back at me. And I was like, I'm okay. I thought maybe I broke her from the day before. And then about 5 minutes from the top, she just stopped and sat down. And I pet her. I'm like, you're okay. You're all right. I'm sorry I broke you. And then we went. And then the vision started going. I went, oh my gosh, I'm going low.
Oh, she's trying to get you to stop.
Yeah. So I knew once I got to the top, I'd be okay because my heart rate would come down and I'd be okay. So we pushed to the top, and sure enough, it went away. When I really went low last December, I didn't realize this at the time, but when I was sitting on the floor sweating, Delilah was right there, just staring at me. And I didn't put it together or anything. And then 3 weeks later, I was down southern Utah again, hiking, and I started going lower. And all of a sudden, she kept looking back at me. And then I put it together. And so whenever I drop low, if we're out hiking or walking, she will alert me 10 to 15 minutes before that I am dropping. And I assure her I'm okay. But she's naturally a diabetic alert dog. She won't wake me up or anything. But when we're out hiking, the lower I go, she will actually at some point just sit and stop and
oh my gosh,
until I
isn't that awesome?
Going.
That's really. Do you ever say to her, "Hey there, Delilah"?
Oh yeah, all the time.
I would too.
Yeah,
Does that start you singing the song?
Yep.
Yeah.
But she's great. So we actually looked at having her professionally trained. And at the end of the day, we decided not to do it. Typically, they do that with puppies, not 3-year-olds. But when they evaluated her, they actually really thought, okay, yep, she is an alert dog. We feel that we could get her. But I'm not uncontrolled enough to pay $11,000.
Listen, you can't teach speed. That dog's a natural. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. She is a natural. And I think part of that was even when she was a younger puppy, one of her favorite games was to play hide and go seek in the house. And so she could find me in a closet. She would sniff me out. And so she's always really been in tune. But we didn't realize that until, a few episodes in that she can recognize low blood sugars, which is really amazing.
Is that breed known for that or no?
Yeah, we actually read that they say one of the better diabetic alert dogs are poodles.
About that. My parents had a poodle when I was born. Well, I guess born. When they brought me home. I'm adopted. And the dog went after me one time and my mom got rid of the dog. And
oh, wow.
Yeah, I've been told that story so many times because my mom loved that dog, apparently. That was it. That's the story I was always told. My mom's no, I wasn't going to let her go after you. I believe the dog's name was Gigi, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I think poodles are great. I had one and she died about a year before we got the new ones. And she was 17. She was my girl, went everywhere with me. If I was out dinner, I would tell my wife, we got to hurry up and go home. I got to go home and play with Lily. That was my whole thing, was going home and playing with her. And she died at 17. And it took me a long time to get another dog, but I'm all about the poodle breeds. I think they're amazing dogs.
Yeah. 17 is a nice long life for a dog.
If I felt I got cheated, I felt I should have had another 17 years.
Yeah, no, I can imagine. Well, Mike, you have a really good way about you. I enjoyed this.
Me too.
What do you do for a living?
So I am director for a company that we build data centers.
Okay.
So the power side of data centers, so battery backup energy type systems. So if the data center goes down, we still keep it up and running. So I'm a director. I have a sales team and a project management team, and we design and build data centers around the critical infrastructure.
Wow, it's really something. Is AI going to put a real drain on power the way they're talking about it? And are you guys working on battery backup for that? I mean, I wouldn't imagine can you even approximate that kind of power?
It's interesting when you look at where what we call is a network rack of what the power capacity used to be for a network rack, say 5 years ago, to where it is today. Back then, let's say 3 to 5 kilowatts per rack was a lot. Well, now you're talking anywhere from 100 to 500 kilowatts per rack.
Really?
And so the strain that it puts on those batteries, of course, everything's going lithium ion battery. When the AI servers spool up, they bring in so much power that actually sometimes a utility can't even keep up. And they actually end up hitting battery backup systems to look for that power. So there's a lot of strain on it, but data centers will never go away. If anything, they're getting more and more popular. They're popping up everywhere. It's an exciting time in our world. The actual hardest thing is it's not so much getting power to those systems, it's actually keeping them cool. That's going to be the challenge, is keeping all those systems cool, because if they overheat, of course, they can't function. And how do you keep that much, coolness around? So there's direct to chip, you can do immersion. It just goes on. That's a whole 3-hour podcast right there. It's exciting.
Do you think the way that we create power is going to have to change to keep up with it? Because I'm asking specifically, do you think that people are going to have to look at more nuclear options to generate electricity?
That's the way the industry is looking. When you get into Meta, Microsoft, Apple, all of those, they are looking at starting to do some type of nuclear reactor type things, mini reactors to power those because of the amount of power draw. It's interesting. Data centers used to go to certain areas. Now data centers look for wherever there's available power. So that seems to be what they're looking for.
Wow.
If there's a utility that has an extra, let's say 400 megawatts of power, that's where a data center is going. So that's where they look.
You're going to see the centers popping up where the energy already exists.
Yep.
Yeah, that's going to
Absolutely.
be how they pick their real estate. That's interesting. And you're not really limited. I mean, our data center is limited by distance? Not anymore, right? Because of the speed of the internet. Doesn't really matter, does it?
Not anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the way it used to be. You used to want to put like data centers in populated areas. And now with latency, it's just not really an issue.
Yeah.
And so now they're popping up. And what you're seeing is a lot of like modular power containers that we can just populate all around the country wherever we can get data centers in. So it's a changing landscape, and it's really exciting because, you know, we talked a little bit earlier, the way technology's changed over, let's say, the last 10, 20, 30 years. It's almost like a year now is really only like a month. It's just going so fast. It's changing so quickly.
Yeah. Well, maybe one day it'll just be like Back to the Future, and we'll all have our own little reactor.
We almost.
Wait, say that again, Mike?
It's almost going to be that way, right?
Yeah.
Like it just has to. Power is going to be the biggest thing, drivers, but it also, as a consumer, it's scary too, because is my utility rate going up because of all these data centers, because they have to add capacity. You might see that too, your electric bill going up because they got to build more infrastructure to support the data center.
My electric bill is definitely higher than it was a year and a half ago.
Absolutely. I asked my wife last night and she said, yeah, we were about $500 a month.
Yeah.
Like, ouch.
I see it climbing for sure. So, all right. Well, that's definitely a different conversation, but I appreciate you sharing that with me. Thank you. You're good at talking, and you said before we got going that you speak a lot at work, but I didn't ask you for what. So that's interesting.
I'm on the phone all the time, and my wife, she'll tell you I can talk to anybody all day long.
Well, I think it's a great skill to have. It's propelling me through my adulthood. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I really appreciate this, man. Hold on 1 second for me. Thank you.
You bet.
This episode of the Juicebox Podcast is sponsored by the Contour NextGen blood glucose meter. Learn more and get started today at contournext.com/juicebox. Thanks for tuning in today, and thanks to Medtronic Diabetes for sponsoring this episode. We've been talking about Medtronic's MiniMed 780G system today, an automated insulin delivery system that helps make diabetes management easier day and night. Whether it's their meal detection technology or the Medtronic extended infusion set, it all comes together to simplify life with diabetes. Go find out more at my link, medtronicdiabetes.com/juicebox. I can't thank you enough for listening. Please make sure you're subscribed or following in your audio app. I'll be back tomorrow with another episode of the Juicebox Podcast. Check out my algorithm pumping series to help you make sense of automated insulin delivery systems like Omnipod 5, Loop, Medtronic 780G, twiist, Tandem Control IQ, and much more. Each episode will dive into the setup, features, and real-world usage tips that can transform your daily type 1 diabetes management. We cut through the jargon, share personal experiences, and show you how these algorithms can simplify and streamline your care. If you're curious about automated insulin pumping, go find the Algorithm Pumping series in the Juicebox Podcast. Easiest way, juiceboxpodcast.com, and go up into the menu. Click on series, and it'll be right there. If you're looking for community around type 1 diabetes, check out the Juicebox Podcast private Facebook group, Juicebox Podcast, Type 1 Diabetes. But everybody is welcome. Type 1, Type 2, gestational, loved ones, it doesn't matter to me. If you're impacted by diabetes and you're looking for support, comfort, or community, check out Juicebox Podcast, Type 1 Diabetes on Facebook. The episode you just heard was professionally edited by Wrong Way Recording. WrongWayRecording.com.